you guys know that Lake Superior's water level has been decreasing like vastly over the years? And the reason behind it is that the government is secretly bottling up and selling it across the nation. They don't want to tell you that. Whether this may or may not be true, it seems pretty, irrational. But this is an example of a conspiracy theory, which is any theory that seeks to explain a disputed case or matter as a plot that has been created by a secret group or alliance of people rather than by an individual or isolated act. They are very prevalent in society. You guys have probably heard dozens of different conspiracy theories, everything from JFK to 9/11, and they're, in my opinion, are very inspirational in helping us to think objectively, which as college students I think is a pretty important tool, as we go through this whole collegiate experience. And now for my second question, has anybody in here heard of the band Nirvana? I would hope so. Okay, they happen to be one of my favorite bands of all time, and so I'm presuming that you guys have heard of Kurt Cobain, that know Nirvana, know that he was the frontman and lead singer of the rock band out of the 90s, and that he was married to Courtney Love and committed suicide in 1994. Now, I found that a very interesting conspiracy was formulated around the death that he was actually murdered. This is a conspiracy theory of Kurt Cobain's death. And I extensively researched it, being the avid Nirvana fan that I was, and for a number of years. And this is just, my visual is actually of, I think I did it right? Yeah. Maybe I can maximize it really quick. Does that do it? Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, so this is my visual. That's actually the title of a book that has a fascinating amount of conspiracy research, evidence, whatever you want to call it. And I feel that it's very relevant because of the legacy and impact that Kurt Cobain left in society. I believe, for me at least, he still has an impact on my life, and I would be willing to bet that he does nationwide and even worldwide. I'm sure maybe some of you are still big fans of his music. And this conspiracy, as well as many conspiracies, opens up the door to objective thinking, as I mentioned, and it's just a very good concept to delve into. So some people have attested that Kurt Cobain was the victim of a very malicious conspiracy, and I'm here today to tell you a couple of reasons why. And when I'm done telling you a little bit about the conspiracy behind his death, you will know some people's belief on why Courtney Love, who he was married to, had a motive for his murder, and some details about the death of Elven that were very suspicious following Cobain's death. We'll know a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And then finally the details of when his body was found, and including the autopsy and what many people have said are contradictions in logic to a suicide claim. And so let's just dive right into the conspiracy of his murder. So Courtney Love hired private investigator Tom Grant, and there's a great deal of credibility behind him. You can Google him, you'll find all sorts of information. And she originally hired him to search for, to track Kurt Cobain's credit card, because she proclaimed that he was missing. This is also under skepticism in the conspiracy theory. And this was back in 1994. Now, what she may or may not have expected is that Tom Grant actually came to a valid motive, he claims as a valid motive, for the murder of Kurt Cobain, which is as old as time itself, the motive for money. And it turns out Grant found out that Love was facing a divorce and potentially could have lost millions of dollars. And there was a note that she admitted that Kurt had given her when he was in Rome doing the Lollapalooza tour, I think in about 1993 or so, and it mentioned his wanting a divorce. And she also admits to burning it in an interview. And on this tour, Kurt Cobain was hospitalized with a Rohypnol and champagne overdose, which Rohypnol is a date rape drug, roofies, if you guys knew that or not, I don't know. And Tom Grant he believes that was the first attempted murder of Kurt Cobain. And in March of 1994, Kurt Cobain had his will redone, which excluded Courtney, and never got the chance to sign it. And Rosemary Carroll was the attorney for Courtney Love, and she purportedly told Grant that Love had asked her to get the meanest, most vicious divorce lawyer she could find. And Nirvana's management company said that the Rome incident was not a suicide attempt, as Love had later claimed, and that Kurt was going to just take his and Courtney's money and run away, which kind of goes with the whole money motive. And it's just, a lot of people find it very suspicious that hours after Love flew into Rome, they argued and he had decided to leave her, and which the note kind of exemplified. And then he was all of a sudden comatose in the hospital with, the combination of Rofinol and champagne in his system. And also interesting is in the Melody Maker magazine of 1994, Courtney was quoted as saying, "This reminds me of when I take those dihydrocodeines I get over here in London with Rofinol and champagne." And Love actually had a prescription to the Rofinol. And she also told Select magazine, following the Rome incident, that if he thinks he can get away from me that easily, he can forget it. I'll follow him through hell. And many witnesses, including Grant, claim that Love got very upset when Kurt later declined the Lollapalooza tour of 1994. And there was rumors that he was planning on leaving Nirvana, but he had actually made plans to record music with Michael Stipe of R.E.M. And so Tom Grant's conclusion to the motive theory is that with the divorce, Love would have gotten half of all of his, all of his money, and with this, because they had a prenuptial agreement. And with Suicide, she got everything, including publicity, as her lived through this album. She was the lead singer of the band Hole, if you guys knew that or not. It was released shortly following Cobain's death. Also following Cobain's death is the suspicious death of Elven Hoke. Elden Hoke was the singer of a band called The Mentors, and he claimed shortly after Cobain's body was found that Love had offered him $50,000 to kill her husband, or blow her husband's head off, as he quoted directly, 3 months before Kurt Cobain's body was found. He was administered a polygraph test by Dr. Edward Gelb, who is one of the nation's leading polygraph experts, and on March 6, 1996, passed with 99.7% certainty that he was telling the truth. And he also spoke about this, told his story on Nick Broomfield's Kurt and Courtney documentary, which you can find, order it. It premiered on the Sundance channel as well as independent channels. And coincidentally, 8 days after he told his story on Kurt and Courtney, he was found dead, apparently hit by a train in Riverside, California. And so Hoke's death was very provocative to the conspiracy theory of Kurt Cobain's murder. It was just a little too coincidental, some people felt, but not quite as provocative as the conditions that Kurt Cobain's body was found in. He was found on April 8, 1994, in the greenhouse of his and Love's Seattle home. And he had a shotgun over his chest and paraphernalia and stuff close by. And several people, including Grant, found that they believed that several elements to the crime scene had many contradictions in logic to a suicide, which was immediately labeled open shut case. And the autopsy actually revealed that Kurt Cobain had 3 times the lethal dose of heroin in his blood system, which is 225 milligrams or 1.52 milligrams per liter, and as well as the drug Valium, which is a known aggravant to heroin. And many medical experts have debated that the 1 lethal dose is enough to incapacitate you immediately, either putting you in a coma or killing you with the needle still in your arm. So there's a lot of skepticism about that. And some of the crime scene was pretty suspicious, as it was very immaculate when found. The needle that was used to inject the heroin into his system was neatly put away, as well as the paraphernalia, in a cigar box that was a few feet away from the body. And his sleeves were rolled down in buttons, suggesting that he cleaned up after himself. And the Remington 20-gauge shotgun, which he supposedly shot himself in the face with after injecting the heroin, had no fingerprints on it, and neither did this is in the police report actually, you can find that online, that no fingerprints were on the shotgun. And it was also, that provoked Canadian chemist Roger Lewis to write a piece called Dead Men Don't Pull Triggers. And no fingerprints were found on the pen with the suicide note or the shotgun shells that were also found with the body. So for a quick recap, the conspiracy of Kurt Cobain's death seems to be pretty successful in making you think twice about what really happened, considering Grant's conclusion for Courtney Love's motive for murder, the suspicious circumstances about the death of Elden Hoke following when Kurt Cobain's body was found, and the found to be contradictions in logic surrounding the crime scene or suicide, however you may see fit. And, a little shaky still. Now that I've informed you of in my opinion, a fine example of a conspiracy theory, maybe you are inspired now to think a little more objectively in any matter that might have possible alternative explanations, whether presented or not. And as with many conspiracy theories, there's so many details to be analyzed and interpreted and even reconstructed, if you will, that I'd like to, if you should be so curious to the numerous details I left out of this conspiracy theory I've shared with you today, I will happily encourage you to investigate and come up with your own theories.
Okay. You nailed it. 10 minutes.
Real quick.
You can breathe again.
So time out.
Yeah, my heart's, man, caffeine can do it.
Where was like the gun? Like,
It was on his body. And there were actually no markings on his hands that said he fired him either. But I won't say more. I'm not biased. I'm not biased at all. Yeah.
I don't get how you not have fingerprints on anything. That's why I'm so confused. Like, how do you just not have fingerprints?
Gloves. I don't know.
Well, like, I mean, you have to touch it sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, someone has to touch this stuff.
That's why the conspiracy theory arose that he was murdered. Conspiracy is that the nanny
Every, like, it's pretty much
were together, disappeared. They're just investigating themselves. JusticeLiquid.com.
Okay, we're ready. Let's go.
I think she paid
We're short on time here. Next.